I remember back in the 90s when everyone was doing new metal and we said, hey, let's just do death metal and let's make it as brutal as we can. And but we were the only death metal band in town. But it was kind of, everyone jumped on that bandwagon and it's like, we're not going to be as good as Rage Against the Machine. So why try? And I'm not going to be as good as the Beatles. So I ain't going to try to sound like the Beatles. And, I don't want to sound like Scour or Pig Destroyer or Fulgora. They all got their own style, their own sound. So yeah, it's really, I guess, counterintuitive to put out the same band over and over.
What's up, everybody? It's Keefy at GhostCultMag.com. I am super stoked to be joined by John Jarvis of Nest and a bunch of other bands. How you doing today, John?
Awesome. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
I'm great, man. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm fascinated, by the genesis of the Nest project. You're always doing a lot of different things in your career. It seems like this is the focus right now. It's one of those things where, this unusual confluence of cool things. You're signed to Housecore Records. You just came off of a tour with Lamb of God and Pantera. I am absolutely certain when you conceived this project, I don't know if you knew you were going to be playing this music in arenas, because it definitely feels like, underground music for not commercial metal fans. But, obviously, you got a long association with Philip and Housecore, and super cool that you were able to do these shows. I know some people who saw some of them and were blown away.
Yeah, they were pretty insane. Definitely the craziest 2 weeks of my life. And yes, you are correct. We did not see the arena tour happening, especially this early in the band's career. But yeah, so grateful to them and Lamb of God and all the crew. It was just the most incredible time ever. Everyone helped out on so many different levels, and you it's musicians can be weird sometimes. Like I don't expect to borrow anyone's guitar or anything when you go to when I play a show. Like even the local bands, like if I asked the local band, hey, can I borrow your guitar for the show, they'd be kind of freaked out. But Zach Wild ends up letting us use his guitar. Then Lamb of God ends up letting us use their amp head. Like, and everyone just chips in. Grady, Dimebag's guitar tech, me use a guitar pedal because he's like, hey, I've noticed you got a noisy guitar sound and I think this pedal would help you. And of course I'm like, thank you. And he was right. I popped it on, it fixed the issue, and he didn't have to do that, for the opening band, but he did. And so it was great to have such a family atmosphere. And I guess you kind of need that on an arena tour when you're a three-piece band, because we didn't have any crew or sound guys or merch guys or anything or drivers. We did it all ourselves. So we needed all the help we can get.
Right on, and I appreciate that, and of course, the professionalism of those guys speaks for itself. We do a weekly metal show where we, do a lot of metal news and talk about stuff we've been doing all week, interviews we do. So this will eventually make it to there. But we were talking about that tour, and I was like, I don't think people like back from the first. Pantera off dates from the Metallica tour, and I was like, I don't think people really appreciate that, like, for a Live Nation tour that is a humongous complicated thing, as well as any major tour, like Philip doesn't have to put his label bands on as the openers. The thing that he did for you guys and Child Bite is insane. Like it's a gift, right? You don't normally, underground bands don't get those kind of opportunities to get exposure to new audiences. And obviously I don't think Philip has got Housecore to make a lot of money. I think it's just his passion project, like when he was in 100 bands in the 90s. And I think that's kind of the vibe, and it feels like very natural to me and organic, which I really like, because we don't get a lot of that. You get these giant tours with these bands that are pay to play bands, or bands that labels are like, well, put our they're on the same label, or we have the same management, we're trying to boost this band up, and you don't have that. This is like some real shit, for
I,
lack of a
I
better word.
yeah, I agree. And it's very unique. And none of the bands on Housecore sound alike. We're all different, we're all unique, and we all kind of don't fit in. Like we all have our own little niche, so to say. But you're very right. And I mean, even I can go back to the Deftones and say I wouldn't have known who the Deftones were if it wasn't for a Pantera tour coming through St. Louis, and they were the opening band. Them and I Hate God opened up that show. I had no idea who Deftones or I Hate God was. I bought the ticket to see Pantera, obviously, and go through the years through Crowbar is another example. Wouldn't have known of Neurosis. A lot of the opening bands that Pantera would bring through were underground in a way, and I'm glad that they stuck to that. They
That,
could have.
that
There's so many bands that would love to have been on that tour. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I wish I could get in a time machine and go see Pantera, I Hate God, and Deftones in like '96
And White Zombie,
and White Zombie. Yeah.
all on this. Yeah, that was a
I'm
insane show.
I'm from New York originally, so I saw White Zombie as like a terrible Cramps imitation band before they became like a metal band and were really great. But
Right.
like they were a noisy hot mess for a long time before that, and they were they were fun. But like I was like, what is this, and why am I what am I watching? Back in the day, in a place that's obviously long gone. I think it's like a condo now, of course, like all in New York and everywhere else. But yeah, man, just like another project for you, Nest. Let's dial it back for a second, and I really appreciate you unpacking that other stuff. And this has been kind of your focus for a minute, and Endeavors is coming out in April. It's already April in a couple of weeks as we record this today. And so let's dial it back for a second and talk about like putting this band together. You did Agoraphobic for a long time. Seems like I'm not sure if that's on a hiatus or not, but let's talk about Nest for a second and kind of it's a really good record. I've gotten to spin it a few times, thankfully, and I appreciate that kind of every project you've ever had, Fulgora, they're all different. And I think that's kind of part of your makeup as a musician is that you want to, from thing to thing, you would never want to repeat your steps.
Right, yeah, and why I don't know why anyone would want to do that. It's like I remember back in the '90s when everyone was doing new metal, and we said, "Hey, let's just do death metal and let's make it as brutal as we can." And but we were the only death metal band in town. But it was kind of, everyone jumped on that bandwagon, and it's like we're not going to be as good as Rage Against the Machine, so why try? And I'm not going to be as good as the Beatles, so I ain't going to try to sound like the Beatles. And I don't want to sound like Scour or Pig Destroyer or Fulgora. They all got their own style, their own sound. So yeah, it's really, I guess, counterintuitive to put out the same band over and over. But yeah, Nest really started as when the agoraphobic live shows stopped happening and I was out of Pig Destroyer. I didn't really have a reason to stay in Baltimore, and I was going to go start another band. And as that band kind of wasn't working out, I just said, I'll start jamming with my old buddy Timmy, who he was the first guy I ever jammed with when we were in sixth grade. He was the only other kid at school that was into metal. He had a Poison shirt on, and I said, finally, someone. I was like, Poison, but hey, at least you're into metal. Like, and it turned out he became a much better guitar player than I was, and still he could out shred me any day. So got back jamming with him, and then I was right before COVID happened, and he's been in and out of the band from time to time ever since. But that's really how it kind of started. Was right before COVID hit. I had the gear, had a van. I was like, man, I really would like to have a touring band that like I can rely on just myself. I don't have to be like, I wonder if this guitar player wants to tour or the singer wants to tour, the drummer wants to tour. It's like, I want to tour. I'm going to find some guys that want to tour. And that's basically the idea behind it. And it's worked out so far.
Right on. Yeah, the components of what makes you want to make a band, right? It's not just to make the music. It's like what else? A lot of bands can just play local or just make music. And listen, like to be a DIY band in 2024 has a new set of challenges that I think a lot of people have never faced before, even yourself that has been doing music for like 30 years. So it is what it is. These are tough times, even to get in the van and do it like we used to. Everything costs more, and there's, like I said, a lot of inherent extra challenges. But I like the music of Nest is like another flavor for you of extreme music, which I dig. Hey, all of us wore a Poison shirt at one point. I think
Yeah.
I had Rat shirts personally. That was my band from that era. But
I also had Rat shirts. I never owned a Poison shirt. I am a fan
yeah,
and
yeah.
was a fan. I had the cassettes.
Right on. I mean, they had bangers. They had bangers. They had pop, pop hits, and Crew had its merits for a time and a couple of good albums. And sorry, Vince was never a good singer, but that's just me. That's just me. I'm sorry to shit on people, but like he was never good. Like he was the weak link always. And but yeah, man. Let's talk about St. Louis for a second. Obviously everybody knows the Mid Atlantic sort of stronghold of underground metal and Maryland Death Fest and Maryland Doom Fest and all these gnarly places to play. And I actually spent some time in St. Louis last fall, and I was really blown away at having to. My only comparison for Midwest places is Chicago, which is kind of unfair. But I was like really impressed. St. Louis is really cool. Everybody's super nice. But in I don't have a sense that there's a ton of bands there. I feel like there's a few handfuls of really good bands there. I know there's a couple of venues to go play. What's that been like for you to come down there and sort of establish yourself?
Well, it's been in the last few years in St. Louis, been a great like hardcore scene coming up of young bands playing hardcore music. There's still the old guys that have been in bands for 10, 15 years, bands like The Lion's Daughter and Fister, The Gorge. These are all bands that these guys have been in numerous bands since the 90s, and my bands back then would play with their bands. And so there's still a nice metal scene. There's a small venue called the Sinkhole that's putting on the smaller underground shows, and then there's a giant venue called Red Flag that puts on great shows, and they got a state-of-the-art sound system. And like you said, it's just a really cool city. I mean, got a couple cool neighborhoods that you could feel safe in, but that's most major cities there, you're going to find some bad parts of the town. But I'm a big baseball guy, so the Cardinals, actually it's opening day there in St. Louis, so I'm sure it's one of the best places in the world to be today. I really wish I was at Busch Stadium today in St. Louis, so I miss it. And we got great barbecue there. I love St. Louis. When people that live there talk shit about it, I say, well, what are you doing here? You can move anywhere else if you don't like it. But really, St. Louis has a lot to offer, and it's got a great music scene, really. And like I said, I think the young scene is really, it's the hardcore kids that are doing it, which is strange. And like I've noticed kind of shift to Texas for some reason, but there seems to be this scene happening in Texas with all these bands that I really like lately. And it seems like they're young kids playing metal from the 90s, and it's really great. I guess maybe their parents were just playing good music for them, and now they're starting bands and they're making good music. So there's good scenes everywhere, but I would say St. Louis has got a good one too.
Right on. I managed to miss. I was only there for four days. I managed to miss the barbecue, but I did pass by the stadium. I was down there to see a Metallica show with my podcast partner who lives in St. Louis, so he's always extolling the virtues of that place. I did manage to get Steve's hot dogs and the cracker crust pizza that was pretty decent as a snobby.
Emos.
Yep. We did emos, and I got the toasted raviolis, and we did the slinger at the diner for breakfast, which was fun. As a snobby New York guy who loves pizza, and I live in California with horrible pizza, I wasn't. It's certainly better than Chicago, so I'll give that to you folks. Speaking of endeavors, what I like about the record is it's mad direct, straight ahead. It's killer all the way through. There's no some records you're looking for a peaks and valleys, and I feel like with this record, compared to some of your other work, it's just like a fist to the face the whole way, which I like.
Yeah, it's I didn't necessarily think about shortening the songs or making the album much shorter. I honestly didn't even realize it till I saw a recent interview. I just try to do what's best for the song, and I guess we're just not a band that does 7, 8, 9 minute songs. We just short to the point, get the intro, get the verse going, get the pre-chorus, your chorus, go back to the verse. It's Songwriting's not that difficult, really, if you ask me. But you know, that's the way I like to do it. And I could branch out and start writing longer songs, but I don't want to. I like the way we're doing it. And it's really when I'm singing and playing at the same time. It's I don't want to do that for 7 minutes straight, screaming, and like I'd pass out, after 7 minutes of that. So it's nice to have a 2 minute song, take a break, take a drink, whatever. But yeah, it's kind of a thing I've thought about from the beginning of the band. It's like people's attention spans are so short, it's, and there's, like I said earlier, like I'm not is going to be as good as Tool. Tool's got the long songs, they got the proggy cool stuff going. I'll let them have it. I ain't going to try to top them. So I'll just try to be Nest.
I dig that. I appreciate that, of course. And yeah, man, you gotta. I was gonna say, I wonder if there's some inherent challenges that go back and forth. Obviously, it's a band as a unit, but obviously the person that's up front in the vocals and the songwriting, maybe the attention gets put on you a little more than some of your other bands when you can slink into the shadows with just a bass or a guitar. And not be the focal point. Is it not that it's new to you, but is it a little? It's definitely the thing right now. Is it a little more? You have to be a little more present when the focus is on you, right?
Right, for sure. And that's something Rex brought up when we were rehearsing and Pantera was rehearsing before the last tour. He asked me, he's like, "Are you nervous?" And I said, "Well, I've played in front of big crowds before. It's really nothing new. However, this is the first time where I'm the front man. I'm the singer, and like, so there is a little added, pressure." And he's like, "Oh, you got it in you. You're gonna be fine." And I was like, "Thanks, Rex." God, because I'm freaking out. Like, there was a couple songs that we never even played before that that we did play on the tour. So like, I was nervous, and it is true. When you're the bass player, you can kind of get in the back, and all the eyes ain't on you, and it's kind of nice. But yes, it is definitely different.
Nice. I got to participate in a Q&A with Rex, like, a while back when he dropped his first solo record, and he talked about, like, actually he was really excited and rejuvenated to be a front person. He played guitar also, like, his whole life. He played bass since he's a teenager. And he was like, yeah, like, I'm so happy to actually step out front and do something different for a change instead of being, I can always, it's easy for me to just be in the back and do what I do, lay it down. But he's like, it's actually like a good challenge as a musician to kind of, take the focus and be the person, be the man, so to speak. But yeah, man, Endeavors is real strong. I'm really stoked for people to get to hear this thing. I always feel lucky. I'm never one of these guys like, I heard it first, touch me. Who wants to touch me? I'm not that kind of person. I never brag about what things I got to hear early or whatever, but I only do that in the course of doing these interviews. But yeah, man, it's good to have some throwback music, if you will, today, because again, it's a weird time, and I think sometimes the strength of riffs and angry songs will carry you forward through a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and thank you. And yes, I was definitely angry during a lot of these songs, and hopefully that translated.
Yeah, for sure, man. It comes across. It comes across. So the record's coming out. Obviously, your next tour will not be in arenas.
No.
Opening for very popular bands. So, like, what's the goals? So, what can you manage in terms of touring these days with work life balance and things like that?
Yeah, so what we're gonna do is on the 10th of April, we start the Endeavors tour in New Orleans, and we're gonna go basically to California and back for 18 shows. We're not gonna take any days off, just hit it 18 shows in a row. And there's actually going to be a few bands that we are opening up for. We just happen to be coming through some spots where there's some bigger tours happening. And so in Vegas, we're jumping on the Pathology show. And then there's another one, and I think in Hollywood, where there's another tour package was coming through. We just happened to line up with that and get on that. But yeah, we're playing a couple of venues that we have played. We're playing some states that we've never played. And yeah, it's like you mentioned earlier, it's a little difficult and costs a little more these days to do, but we figured out a way to at least break even and make money every night. So as long as we keep touring the way that we have, it'll be all right. But if I was forced to rent a tour bus, we would need bigger crowds. You know what I mean? So the way we're doing it, I think, is working out really well, and pumped to promote the record. So that's really the next plan is, doing these shows, promoting the record, and going from there.
Right on. Just out of curiosity, I always ask this question whenever I have a band or a band member that has had projects with their sibling. You always hear about the Abbott brothers and you hear about the Van Halens, but there's also the dark side of being in a band with your family. You've done quite a few bands with your brother. So, like, what's that like? And you ever have like a spillover, good or bad, from the band to the personal with the family?
I mean, we've been in bands since he was like 9 years old, and So, and I'm sure we'll be in other bands at this point, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, it's a little more intense, of course, when it's blood, but it's also, you care more when it's your blood. So it's something very special because when we were very young, learning about all these great bands and learning all how to play our instruments, we would never have dreamed to be touring the world with these same people. You know what I mean? It's insane. Like we actually just talked today about something coming up very special that I can't talk about, but we're both just kind of like, wow, I can't believe this is about to happen. Some pretty big names all on one project. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's always very special, and we've been in a lot of cool bands together, and I'm really most excited about the future projects we're about to, or the future releases, so to say, that we have.
Right on. All right. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate your time, man. It's been great catching up with you. I haven't seen you in a minute. Just congrats on all this hard work you put in for Nest, and I hope you get everything out of it you put in, man, on the positive.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.